Welcome to the Life in Progress podcast, a space we've set aside to dive into vulnerable topics and really discover what it looks like to be authentic in a filtered world.
On this episode, we talk about life in our 20s versus our 30s, what we've learned, and what we wish we could tell our younger selves.
We hope you enjoy, guys. Welcome to episode 2. We survived our very first podcast, and we just want to say thank you guys so much. This has been completely unreal to just hear the feedback, people posting comments, and feeling inspired and encouraged. And this is exactly what we want. And you've heard 35 minutes of us talking, so thank you. That is badass. Yeah. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been awesome because I feel like going back to last week, even talking about self-perspective, I just even thought, no one's going to listen. Even though we were hoping and reaching out to people and posting it, I just still kind of doubted that it was worth time for people to listen to. So getting all the feedback and the comments and all that has been just so encouraging to keep this going. Because after the first one, it was like, well, do we stop while we're ahead?
Yeah.
But we're going to keep pushing through because this has been really fun and challenging, and hopefully it's been encouraging to those listening as well.
Yeah, I'm just blown away. You guys are awesome. I know we're not famous #1 podcast right now, but honestly, I feel on cloud nine, and I'm just so thankful that something that's so important to us and has really been fiercely put on our heart has impacted some of you listening now in one way or another. And I just can't even express how amazing that feels. And I guess I'll just dive into our quote that we kind of picked for this week. Brene Brown, I love her. We'll probably talk about her a lot more. But this quote says, "You can choose courage or you can choose comfort, but you cannot have both." And then it goes into courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen. And I just love that so much because, Brene Brown has so much good stuff to say about vulnerability and diving into shame and, self-worth and value. But I think for this, it's just so important to realize, courage and bravery and leaning into the discomfort and just going for it is actually what really is needed to do big things. You're not going to reach success or I think even real joy without diving in. And I think that this is a great example of that. So I'm thankful. I hope this is an encouraging quote for you because I think it's just a really nice way to piggyback off of our last episode. And yeah. I don't know,
Awesome.
I'm into it.
I love it. I love that quote. It's a good one. Cool. So this week we're going to dive into a new topic, and hopefully it can relate to you on some level. So we're calling it 20s versus 30s. So like we said last podcast when we introduced ourselves, we said our age, which I am 31. This is Brenda. And Al is 32.
Yeah, by the time this is out, I will be 32. So I'm winning, I guess.
We're in the future right now. So, so we have some wisdom, not because we are intelligent, but because we've probably collectively made a lot of awesome mistakes and have learned along the way. Whether you are in that age category, 20s, 30s, younger, older, I'm sure some of this can relate to you, and hopefully maybe we can shed some wisdom or insight on some things that maybe you're facing or give you a good laugh as you're listening to this saying, yep, me too. So, we'll just kind of make it fun in the beginning and just rattle off a few just different things that come to mind. Just when I was thinking today about this, okay, who was I in my 20s? It seems like yesterday, but some of that was more than 11 years ago, which feels just
How does that
strange.
even happen? How does that happen?
Because it literally feels like yesterday.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but it's just trying to think, okay, remember who I was at 20, 22, 25, whatever. And I just started cracking up just because I'm sitting here, my 1.5-year-old daughter is napping. I'm at home and I'm like coming up with a list of what I did or what I thought of in my 20s. It just felt like such a surreal moment.
Yeah.
But I'm thankful for my 20s because it made me who I am today. But definitely something that came to mind, like more of a funny thing, was going out versus staying in. I'm sure you can attest now because we were together in our 20s.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like if Friday night came around and you didn't have plans, you felt like the lamest person ever.
You're a loser.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Done.
100.
And if you are, it's because you're sick or I don't know. Like, that's really the only, I think, real excuse.
And
you
even
could
so,
have
we'd like push through. Like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Give me some coffee. I'm good.
I will make it work. Give me all the medicine to just get through the night because I am not staying home tonight.
No.
It's not what you do.
No.
It's not what you do.
Always go out. You always do something. And
now?
No. Opposite.
If I have no plans on a Friday night and the rest of the weekend is free, like, best weekend ever.
That's a staycation.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like when you have no plans on a weekend and can get things like errands done or the house clean, like, what a feeling.
It's so nice.
What a life, you know?
Yeah, but not in your 20s.
No.
So look forward to that if you're in your 20s listening right now and you're exhausted
it's
from all the going out you're doing. It gets better.
Yes, it sure does. And it's not, I think the thing is too, I always thought like, man, when I get older, like, will I be bored? Mm-hmm. What'll happen? Things change. Like, people change. They're boring. We don't hang out with them anymore. They just stay in, or they want to go to bed early. I love my life. I love, like, if I am up past 9:30 on a school night or Friday night, Saturday night, like, I'm going big.
Yeah.
I'm going hard. And I don't have it in me anymore, really. No. So, anyway, I think you all get the point. Good road ahead with lots of sleep because we need it in our age.
Yeah.
Our old age.
What else do you remember from your 20s, Al?
Oh, God. Well, I do miss the days of, like, being able to eat whatever I wanted and not have to worry. Like, when I look at pictures of me, I'm like, oh, my gosh. Like, I ate and did whatever I wanted and didn't have to worry about anything. And now I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah.
I had, like, one night of, like, a couple sugary cocktails, and I'm like, game over. My clothes don't fit anymore. Like, this is not okay. Hence, you stay in and you don't drink and you're all good. No, but yeah, I think your body just changes. I mean, I'm not even a mom, so I don't know how that works yet, but I can only imagine. But everything starts to slow down a little bit. And I think when you're 20s, in your 20s, you kind of think like, oh, that won't be me. Mm-hmm. Like somehow you are like different in that way. Yeah. Oh no, it starts now. Yeah. Like it literally starts a decade out, not when we're like in our 40s, 50s, 60s. So
you start getting all the anti-aging creams, the moisturizers, the under eye cream.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Never too early to start.
Oh, my gosh. I used to go, like, days without, like, washing my makeup off. I'm like, my eyeliner's still good? I'm going to keep that going. I'm just going to touch that up.
Day 2?
Yeah, now, forget it.
I can still make that cat eye work. No big deal. Just pop a couple wings on and you're good.
Now I'm going for that grungy look day 2. God. Yeah, no, now it...
Now we have what you'd call a routine.
Yeah,
a nighttime routine. Okay, great. So I'm going to need to set aside before my 9:30 bedtime about 30 minutes of a quote-unquote routine that I do. Before, if I brushed my teeth before bed, I felt like a champion. Like, gone are those days. We've got the floss. We've got the toothpaste. I mean, it is a whole thing. The moisturizer.
But why do we love
cream. It? Oh, I love it so much.
I love it.
And you know what? I think why? Because I think when we get it, or at least for me, now that I'm in my 30s, I think just in general, self-care is such a big deal. And just knowing that, like before, I think in my 20s, I'd say like, oh, I'll just go out. Like, I don't need sleep. Like, sleep is for like, I don't know. Like, you don't need sleep. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, if I do not get, honestly, my 8 hours of sleep and I'm taking care of myself, having at least 1 or 2 nights in completely a week, Washing off my makeup before bed, like showering every morning. Like if I don't have my routine, I'm off. Yeah. And I just feel like I'm not taking care of myself. So I think that that's a big change, at least that I've seen in this decade as opposed to before, where, to be honest, I felt like a lot of it was kind of, in a way, like living for other people a little bit. I need to spread myself out. I need to hang out with all these people and connect and like invest my time here or there. And now it's like, oh no, I want to like read a book. I want to take care of my body. I want to take care of myself. So I guess that's probably my answer.
Yeah, definitely. I think I used to be so extroverted that I didn't understand introverted people.
Totally.
Like, they kind of bothered me. Like, my ignorant 21-year-old self would say that. Now,
and then you married Jamie.
And then I married Jamie, who is very introverted. So it worked out. And I've actually learned within aging that I'm less extroverted than I thought. And maybe a little bit more introverted as I'm aging, as I'm a mom. And I feel like before I thought you're one or the other and there's no in between. And now I'm relaxing in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, totally.
I still definitely get energized by other people. And that could definitely have something to do with staying home with a 1.5-year-old all day. But I definitely find time where it's nice to just like sit in the quiet room before everybody else wakes up or when everybody's going to bed, and I'm staying up just so I can have alone time. So that's definitely changed from my 20s, where it was just go, go, go. The more the merrier all the time, 24/7.
Yes, to everything.
Always yes. Always yes. And I'll figure it out along the way.
Totally. I don't want to go, but I said yes, and I have to go.
Yeah,
totally.
Definitely.
I think just something that's really important to think about is the idea of being focused on you and your needs and your wants is really being self-focused and not selfish. And I think that we really could all take that into consideration, because I think so often we are worried about what other people think, and we want to really just make people happy, and make sure, like, someone's inviting you to go do something, like, you want to hang out with them, that's great. But at the same time, it is so important to focus on what your needs are and to, again, be self-focused so that you are really being the best version of yourself. Because if you aren't able to do that, you really can't present that to someone else either.
That's good. Your therapist is smart.
She sure is. Love her. Awesome.
Well, that was a little tidbit of what we just kind of would shoot off about different things from our 20s to 30s. So hopefully you can kind of relate to that. We're going to keep the conversation going, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. And we're going to ask each other some questions. So we thought of these questions on our own. The other person doesn't know what we're going to be asking. So I think it's a little bit more fun and natural that way, so we can kind of get our initial thoughts. So I'll start.
Perfect.
Al, what was your favorite and least favorite age of your 20s? And why?
God. Wow, this is hard. Dang, Bren, bringing out the big guns. That's a tough one. I mean, oh my gosh, okay, I guess my favorite age, honestly, would be 29. Really, like,
convenient.
As close
Very
to 30 as possible.
convenient.
But I think by that time, I mean, I'd obviously gone through a lot. You know my story. Some of you listening may know. We'll definitely, I'm sure, would be sharing that at a later time. But I think at that point in my life, I really had grown a lot through past experiences. And had kind of come into my own a lot more. So by the time I was 29, I felt much more in control of my life, much happier. So I really would say that was the best age for me. And it definitely made going in 30s a lot easier at that point. I'm just right there. I don't know about the least. I mean, I guess early 20s. I'm not going to pick one. I'm sorry. But I think really just I felt very lost, to be honest, in figuring myself out and in a tough relationship. And I think that I felt kind of aimless and confused for an extended period of time. So I think being able to be, pushing forward about 5-6 years later, having grown so much from my experiences in such a healthy, positive way, was really great for me. So
that's a good answer.
I don't know. There's no specific age that I can think of for like tough, besides like multiple years. But that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm in a good place.
I love that it's the best is the very end and the worst is the very beginning.
Well, life in progress. Does that work? I don't know.
It's very perfect. I love it.
So should I ask you a question and then we'll rotate?
All right.
Okay.
Let me drink some tequila first.
Okay, perfect. So we're drinking a little. What do you have there, Marg?
I've got a Marg, yeah.
Perfect. And I'm doing a little vodka tonic because you know what? When there's no wine, you figure out something else that you can. So let me ask you my first question for you.
Okay.
So what has surprised you most about being in your 30s?
Surprised me the most. The first thing that comes to mind is like just how much I've grown to accept myself for where I am now. Because I think I spent so much of my 20s and even before that figuring out who I'm going to become. Like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And I think that really just means when I reflect back that I was never really okay with myself and where I was then in that moment, you know?
Yeah.
So now I think, of course, there's always something to work on. And I'm a firm believer in that. But I'm also, I think, becoming more in love with who I am, as weird as that can sound. But just like, this is the life I've been given. And for whatever reason, something about my 30s has made me feel like better at accepting myself for where I am. And knowing like it can and will get better, but I'm good with me right now too.
Hell yeah. And so I'm sorry, I'm going to just jump down your throat and tell you, don't feel that way. You know, don't feel like, well, it's like, it's weird that I love who I am. That's the point. That's the goal. And I think, honestly, even just that shows, I think, me and everyone else, like, we are still working this out. We are still figuring it out. Like, I think that we are being very vulnerable in what we want and what we desire and, like, our big goals and dreams. But it's like, we're still in this with everybody else. You know, we are just like everybody else trying to figure this stuff out. And I think even just that, hearing, like, the idea of being almost nervous about saying that out loud, like, I love who I am. No, that's a beautiful thing. We should be celebrating that. So I love you, but I have to share that because I think, you know, I heard you say that. I'm like, man, no, you should be like celebrating. Praise be. That is amazing. So
that's a good,
anyways.
Well, thanks. All right. I'll ask you one last question. Let's make sure it's a good one. Oh, man. Tell me if this is too much. Do you feel like there was an age in your 20s where you can look back and confidently say that you knew yourself?
No.
Yeah.
Like a firm no. Not at all. I think I thought I knew who I was and I wanted very badly to know who I was. But to be honest, I just don't even know, or I don't think I knew how to even get to that place. Yeah. At all. Fair. Like, I was so far away from figuring that out. And I don't think that I am the norm. I'm sure there's plenty of people that have things much more figured out than I did, or maybe we did at that time. But I just, like, I can say very confidently that I had no freaking clue who I was in my 20s. Yeah. And I'm okay with that. Yeah. You know, I wish I had figured things out sooner. I wish, like, I had a much firmer grasp of who I was and taking ownership and control of my life. But I had a lot to work through before I got to that point. So I definitely don't regret anything. I don't feel like it was a wash. I mean, even the hardest experiences, like, I am thankful for because 100% they've led me to where I am now. But did I know myself? No.
Yeah. And I think it's good to acknowledge that and then, like you said, to follow it up with, and that's okay. Because I think if we start beating ourselves up for who we were, we are just, like, in for it, because we talked about this last week, but we even currently beat ourselves up. So if we're beating ourselves up currently and then also for our past self, like, that's just not a life to live. So I commend you for being able to say that too. And I think it can resonate with probably 99.999% of our listeners, because our 20s, it's just kind of, you're just figuring it out. Yeah. And so a lot of that doesn't attribute to, like, self-acceptance and knowing really who you are. So
and it's important to go through that. Yeah. You know, I don't think, again, nothing is a waste. I think you kind of have to dig and dig and dig and figure things out plug and play, you know, figure out what works, what doesn't work. And then to be in this state of like almost rest in your 30s of like, okay, here I am, bare bones, open. At least that's where we're at now and trying to continue to be. But yeah, this is me. And of course, I want you to like it, but you may not like it, and that's okay, you know. So
I love that.
Yeah. All right. So let's see. Next question. Let's see. Okay. So what do you miss most about being in your 20s?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question. I feel like I could have a lot of answers for this as much as we kind of bagged on our being in our 20s. There was a lot of fun times.
Yeah.
So I feel like I reminisce a lot about my 20s. I'm just, anybody who knows me, I just reminisce a lot and tell stories a lot. But it's just because I love life and I think it's fun. And so I think back to my 20s and I do think about it with a smile, even though the in-betweens, I'm like, oh gosh, that was some curveballs there. But what I miss the most, I think just not having a schedule, like a set schedule, if that makes sense, which is funny because even as I said that, I'm like, oh, but I love that I have a set schedule. I mean, kind of, I guess. Even before having Isley, I was working Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week, and I loved that. But I also loved not having one. Like there was times I was working at a coffee shop at 4:30 in the morning. I'd have to be there and we'd be hanging out at midnight the night before. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'll just drink coffee. No.
The days, girlfriend. No way.
It would never happen.
No.
But I did that literally like several days of the week. Totally. But I also loved that it was like, am I working on a Monday or a Wednesday or I'm working in the night or the morning? And, you know, it just was kind of fun each week to just go with the flow. So I do miss that. But I also wouldn't go back to that because I love now my own schedule. But for my 20s, I loved that, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And I think, you know, it's a routine.
Yeah.
Routine is I think routine is like the nice way to say schedule. It's like the way that doesn't sound as strict. It's like the fun way to say schedule. But yeah, I think routine, like I love routine. I love, most importantly, expectations and knowing what is coming next. Also a little bit of a control freak, but, you know, it's a give and take. But yeah, I think, God, I remember being up so late and waking up early. Like, how? Yeah. How? I get 8 hours and I wake up as if it's been 2. Yeah. Like, there's no way. Not happening. All right. Well, that's all of our questions, right?
Yes, that's it.
So I think the next thing that we had kind of thought about doing is just kind of saying 4 things, if we had to just narrow it down to 4 at the top of mind, what we would be telling our younger self. So I guess we can just kind of go through our 4 things. Yeah. Again, we haven't shared these with each other, so who knows if some of them are similar.
They might be the same.
We have been friends for a long time. Yeah. But yeah, I think we'll just kind of list these off and, you know, maybe it gives you guys something to think about. Hopefully a sense of encouragement as well. Yeah. But I'll go ahead and start. So in no particular order, my first one is I would tell myself, you are loved for exactly who you are right in this moment. And if there's anyone not treating you the way you deserve, bye. Literally, that's what I wrote. But, you know, honestly, I think so often, and we touched on this last week a little bit too, we can quickly, you know, think, oh, well, I will be great if I drop 30 pounds, if I, you know, do this other thing, if I set this goal, if I reach this specific marker, or whatever the case may be. And it's like, if you're just not happy with yourself now, you're never going to be happy, even when you do reach those goals. So it won't matter as much. But I think that's a big one. Feeling loved for who you are. I still struggle with that. But I think that that's a really important one.
That's a really good one.
Thanks. The next one is don't be afraid to ask for help. I think so often I thought, well, I'm struggling with XYZ, fill in the blank, and I can't talk about it. Well, that's never going to work.
Yeah.
I think being able to be open and vulnerable again is like the key.
Yeah.
But even in ways of just asking for help, like logistically, you know, seeing how much Sean and Jamie have helped us with this podcast. Like I tell Sean, like, we literally could not have done this without your help. And it's okay to ask for help, and people want to help. Like, people want to help you in life, and knowing who your people are to be able to help, I think, is so important. So that's my number 2. Number 3, Brene Brown, again, lean into the discomfort. I think so often, for myself especially, I feel like, ooh, that's hard. I'm going to go the other way. I don't want to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know, that's really tough. And over the years, I've really worked hard to just like dive in, lean in, let it be what it is, and see what comes from just trudging forward when things get hard. Because guaranteed, 10 times out of 10, if you try to avoid something and walk away, it will come back, and most likely come back a little bit harder, a little bit bigger, a little bit more fierce. So I think, you know, being able to just lean in, dive in, and allow something to be what it is really just so key. And the last one is you are in control of your life. I think, honestly, throughout my 20s, I felt like I had no control. So everything was trying to gain control. Still a type A, not going to lie, that hasn't changed in my 30s, but I think just being able to, relinquish the control when I can and just let things be what they are sometimes is really important, and that's okay, but in the things that you can control, to take ownership, you know, not meaning to give yourself a hard time when you fail or whatever the case may be, but I think being able to realize, like, if you don't like something, or like we said earlier, if you don't want to do something, guess what? You don't have to. Don't put the blame on someone else. Don't say, well, they made me feel this way. No, you are in control of your feelings, and nobody has the right or the ownership or the power to make you feel a certain way or to do a certain thing. And that's kind of hard, because I think we want to like pass the baton a little bit and be like, well, it's their fault. I can't take the ownership. But I think if we take that as an empowering tool to say, like, I am in control of my life, I can make it exactly what I want it to be, that's it. Yeah. That's perfect.
Wow. Gosh, if we only knew all those things in our 20s.
Wow, imagine where we'd be at our 30s if we were this smart a decade ago.
Oh my gosh. Wow, those are so good, Al. Thanks for sharing those.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear yours now.
But like, man, those are really, really good and really wise at any age. But I think something about your 20s is so pivotal and foundational for the following decade.
Totally.
So I really do hope there's somebody listening that is in their 20s. It's like, okay, I can make these changes, and you can make them at any age, but something, again, about your 20s is just like, this is the time to really make those fork in the road changes.
Totally.
So hopefully that rings true to somebody. So cool.
Let him rip, Bren.
Yeah. All right. So this one is a big shout out to my mom.
Diana in the house.
Yeah, she would always tell me this, and I probably didn't really fully understand it until my 30s. But make plans, but don't plan the outcome. I am also a planner. I am also, you know, I do like to be kind of on the whim, on the fly, but in my heart of hearts, I do like to plan out my schedules. And that just goes for everything. But yeah, my mom would always say, make plans, but don't plan the outcome. And that is a good one. So I wish that I would have applied that a lot more when she told me those things. So people will always tell you that it gets better. We hear that all the time, and it does, but be prepared to work really hard at improving yourself. But it's so worth it. Wow. So you hear all the time, like when you're younger, like, it gets better, life gets better, just wait. And it's true, but I also wish people would follow that up with like some substantial tips or advice.
Feels kind of empty.
Yeah, it does. It's like, it gets better. It's like, cool, I'm just going to wait till it gets better. Yeah. No, you actually have to work for that. Totally. Work on yourself. Like, even in your 20s, don't just wait to do some like rehashing in your 30s, you know, like we're doing right now. But yeah, so it gets better, but yeah, work hard and the reward is strong, you know. So it's okay to say no. And we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier in the episode, but
I can't hear it enough.
Oh my gosh. I know. I tell myself that all the time. But we tend to be yes people because, you know, it comes from a good place. We want to celebrate. We want to hang out. We want to be in community, but also it's okay to say no. And I think in my 20s, I just didn't think that was an option. So I burned myself out, but I would also just go all the time and then wonder why I'm doing some damage control in my late 20s. So,
I mean, we did it for 10 years.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
So yes, it is okay to say no at any age. And the last one's a little bit deep, but I mean, we can go
love
there.
deep.
Yeah. So I would tell this to my young Brenda self. Realize that you have codependent tendencies. Address them head on and realize that you are not responsible for other people's feelings and problems.
Mic drop.
But seriously,
Whoa.
Brenda, you are codependent in nature, and that's okay because you have addressed it and worked on it, and now I feel like it's not really part of my nature anymore, but it took me probably 7 years. I probably was late 20s to realize, oh my gosh, I am really codependent. And not in the stereotypical ways that you see in an abusive relationship or, you know, an addictive partner or something like that. Like, that's not me necessarily, but I just would tend to take on other people's emotions and problems as if they were mine and I had to solve them even though it wasn't being asked, or, you know, fill in the blank. But yeah, so lots of codependent tendencies that I didn't realize till very late in my 20s. So I would go back and tell my younger self, just realize that you have that and just start working on it. And now that I'm in my 30s, I feel much more on the other side of that, but it's still, I feel like I find myself having to tap back into that. Like, whoa, hold on. That's their problem. That's not yours. You don't need to take that on. You don't need to be a hero. You can be empathetic and it can stop there.
Yes.
You know, so
I love that.
Yeah. So those are my 4.
I think that's so good. And I think just to kind of touch on that last point you said, like, it's okay that we're not perfect. Yes. Let's recognize that. Let's know that. Let's believe that. But also, I think it should be an expectation for us to work harder and to be like better versions of ourselves. Because at the end of the day, regardless of everything else, we owe that to ourselves.
Right.
That's what we're here for. You know, we deserve to have the best life that we possibly can for ourselves, you know? And I think by recognizing where we have been, where we are now, and where we'd like to go in the future, it is a process. Yeah. It is a life in progress. And I really do believe that. And that's why I'm just so stoked to do this and to be a part of this process. And I know we're just like shedding layers as we go along, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that there's no rule book for this. I mean, there are millions of podcasts and everybody serves a purpose, but I love that we're writing our own story and we're writing our own rules. And we're just literally, like, if you're listening to this, if you could picture this, we're sitting in Al's studio room, whatever.
Called the Inspiration Station.
Station.
But that's fine. Go ahead.
And we're just talking, like we're wearing headphones and talking into mics, but we're just like hanging out. Like these conversations actually exist. I feel like sometimes we listen to podcasts or talk shows or whatever, and we realize like, oh, this is so scripted, or they rehearse this. Like, we're just chatting, and we hope that resonates with you as a listener, and that you can feel encouraged and empowered to go out and do your own things or just tap into these conversations even deeper, and that you can grow from it or share your story with us. We would love, love, love to hear you guys and what you're going through, what you've been through, what resonated with you. So if you guys could reach out to us, we would love that, because you know, we're doing this for each other, but we're also doing it for you in hopes that we can grow this community and just being honest and vulnerable. So hopefully that rings true to you.
Yes. So guys, again, thank you so much for listening. We appreciate it so much. This has been so awesome so far. And you've listened to one episode. So we are so excited to share what we have moving forward with all of you. So don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in Apple Podcasts. That way you'll be able to be in the loop of when a podcast is uploaded, to listen to new episodes. Feel free to share with your family and friends wherever relevant, screenshot, picture, whatever. We hope that this is relevant to a lot of people. We feel like we'd really benefit for something like this, so hopefully you feel the same. And if you like us, be sure to give us a rating on Apple Podcasts. If not, just keep it to yourself. Yeah. We don't need to hear about that. No bad news around here, please.
Awesome. It's also on YouTube. I found that was easier for some people, so we'll be sure to just keep that uploaded on our YouTube channel, so you can search Life in Progress Podcast, and it's on there. So lots of different options.
Thank you guys so much. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to our podcast and for being willing to join us in these conversations. We hope you join us next time.
Be kind to yourself this week. Don't forget to find us on Instagram at Life in Progress Podcast to stay in the loop.
I'm Al.
And I'm Bren.
And this is the Life in Progress Podcast.